Hello, good morning, everybody. My name is Koen Hamers. I'm here to present you the OpenBao presentation for today. I'm from Adfinis. Next slide, please, Roel. Roel will control the slide, so I need to tell Roel when he needs to go to the next one. Our speakers today, Robert de Bok, also in this call. Maybe you already know him, like my colleague Roel de Kort, two Adfinis engineers with a lot of OpenBao expertise. And my name is Koen Hamers. I'm country manager of Adfinis, the Netherlands. Yeah, a little bit background of who we are. It will be a technical presentation. This is a technical webinar, not a commercial, but of course we would like to tell you a little bit about our background so that you know who we are. Adfinis, we are an international open source organization, very focused on open source. This year, 26 years expertise, 6 years in the Netherlands. And together with all the colleagues, we are a dedicated team of 150 open source experts in 6 countries. And we work a lot together. And I think what differentiates us from other companies is that we have really in-depth open source knowledge. And with that knowledge, we also have the highest partnerships for SUSE, Red Hat, GitLab, Canonical, and also in the past HashiCorp, where we had 25 certified engineers. And also for all these companies, we have got the highest partnership status. Next slide, please, Roel. Yes. Okay. And in this presentation, we will tell you a little bit OpenBao. What is it? Next slide, please, Roel. OpenBao is it's a fork of HashiCorp Vault. As you may know or may not know, HashiCorp decided in August 2023 to close or to change the license. It was always, you had 2 versions. You had an open source version of HashiCorp Vault and an enterprise version with enterprise features. HashiCorp decided in 2023 to change the license to make it a business license, not open source anymore. And we, as an open source company, had our thoughts about that because we are really open source driven and we really believe in software that is open so that a community can drive it. It's technical driven in that way and not commercial driven. And so what you can see is that OpenBao is basically where HashiCorp Vault open source stopped and OpenBao continued. And OpenBao these days is getting big. It's already big and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. In very, it's accelerating, and the governance is underneath the Linux Foundation as hundreds of open source projects, also like, for example, the Red Hat projects and the SUSE projects, so that the governance is arranged by that. And there's no vendor lock-in. Everything is open source, 100% open source, also enterprise features that are on top of it, built in the last years. But we will explain that a little bit later. Next slide, please, Roel. And yeah, I think what's very nice of it, it's not based on or charged on the number of clients. It's and that also means, well, maybe you have the problem with other products that you don't know how many clients you will use in, for example, 3 years, which makes it very unpredictable and kind of dangerous because it can cost you a lot of money. And what also happens then is that you optimize the environment based on the number of clients on licenses in technical things. And what's also very important, it's a European. I think that's very important these days. We really strong belief is that we should ship less money to US tech, but invest more in Europe. And with open source and with Adfinis delivering support on top of that, it's 100% Europe based. Next slide, please. Just one question, one remark from my side. I've got to tell you that we have a question and answer round after the presentation or during the presentation. So if you've got any questions regarding what I'm telling or what my colleagues will tell, just fill in the question, and after the presentation, we will come back on it. Yes, and the partnership that we have at this moment with OpenBao, how we relate in OpenBao is that we with the knowledge that we had from the past from our HashiCorp Vault, we dove straight into the HashiCorp projects, and these days we are one of the biggest contributors. We are there with 6 full-time developers. We are in the steering committee and in development committee, so that we really also can steer the project and also really have a vote in what will be released and what not. It's always a democratic process, how it should be, because it's open source. So, but I think if you deliver support, it's very important that you also are maintainer there, so that you really can help organizations with not only best effort support, but really can help them also with code and etc. And a lot of code that that's in there these days is written by us, written by Adfinis. We made it 100% open source again, so you can use it, and it's there. But we always tell our customers, hey, if on a Sunday morning you've got a problem with production, it's very handy to be able to call the company that wrote the code itself, and that is our support. So no vendor lock-in, but we can offer 24/7 support with all the rest, and we have a vote in the committee so that we can really help our customers, and that is where we exist of, and that's also how we are able to pay the maintainers. This is really how an open source project, how an open source company should behave and how it should look. So no vendor lock-in, you are free, but we own the code. It's not a product, but we donate a lot and we know everything in detail. Next slide, please.
Yeah. Just to add on to that, today 2 of our direct colleagues have been added to the development working group as voting members. So the community also from Adfinis within OpenBao is growing each day.
Yeah. Thank you, Roel. Yeah, did not knew that. All right, Robert. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. So, bit of a step back. Why secrets management? If I think back at the start of my career, you used to obtain a secret from, let's say, a database person by walking to them, trusting them, asking them, can you give me an account to something? Yes, here's a post-it or an email. And basically with that post-it or so, it's already compromised, right? That post-it leaves his desk, enters my desk, people can see it, it's not trackable, it's compromised from day one. Add to that probably system administrators can log into a system that has that credential installed, so who can use the secret can be anyone, basically. Another bigger problem is that it becomes anonymous. So I received a note, so there is a name attached to it, but once it's installed, it's anonymous. You don't really know who is using it. In a small scale company, that's doable, right? That's not a big problem. But companies are growing, IT infrastructure is growing. This is not possible anymore. There's lots of compliance regulations that also demand that this is not a good pattern to use. So we need some kind of a system to manage these secrets.
And that's actually where OpenBao fits in. So it's what Robert also mentioned. It's not really a password database like something like one password or LastPass. It's also not only a secure KV store. I mean, in the basis it is, but it's pretty, it's more than that. It also sits between your workload, your infrastructure, CI/CD platforms, your identity providers, cloud providers, Kubernetes clusters, whatever. What also, in my opinion, is a great feature of it is that it's cloud agnostic. So you're not when you use OpenBao, you're not tied to a specific cloud vendor. for your secret management. I mean, when you run an Azure on AWS, it's easy to use Azure Key Vault or AWS Secret Manager. But in the end, you're then still tied to that specific cloud provider. And with OpenBao, it actually provides you a consistent interface across environments. So whether you're on-premise or you run on a single cloud or a multi-cloud, it doesn't really matter because in the end, OpenBao provides a homogeneous API interface for secret management. Another important part, what also has been mentioned by Koen, is it also reduces your vendor lock-in. So because you're not really tied to a specific vendor or a specific cloud provider, it makes your design and your architecture a lot more portable, whether that is a hybrid architecture or multi-cloud architecture. So what we see here in this diagram is OpenBao and the trust relationship it has between the different components. Kubernetes needs credentials, GitLab CI needs credentials, applications need maybe database access, cloud integrations need access keys or tokens. And without a centralized secret management solution, these will scatter throughout your environment, whether that be CI/CD variables or Kubernetes secrets, even local files or whatever. And that creates multiple problems. Also something that Robert mentions that which secrets even exist in your environment. It becomes really hard to rotate or revoke them. And it also becomes hard, if not impossible, to audit. And OpenBao addresses this by exposing a consistent API for authentication, authorization, secret retrieval, dynamic secrets, credential issuance, leasing, revocation, and auditing.
And just to add that for rule, OpenBao runs just about anywhere. It doesn't really matter. It can be in a container, on a VM, on a physical machine. It doesn't really matter. You can run it on your laptop to try things, which I also really love about open source is that I can learn myself without a license or so. So a very strong model for developers as well. So secrets have sort of a life cycle, just as any digital asset, right? So if you look at this short list, created, used, refreshed, and revoked, it's a bit like an application that has CRUD, create, read, update, delete. Similarly, a secret has this life cycle as well. In some situations like KV, which is a specific secrets engine, it can be created and used. You can update it. There's no logic in OpenBao to do that, and you can revoke it. We'll see a couple of other secrets engines in the demos, which also refresh tokens, which makes it really, really strong, refresh passwords. So it makes it really, really strong. So from a user perspective of OpenBao, you can just do CRUD operations to secrets. OpenBao has a couple of aspects to it. First of all, everything is API. So there is a UI and there is a CLI. They all end up on the API. And also just to stop a dream, the UI, yes, it works. Not everything is in the UI. The API has everything in there, which means that also OpenTofu or Terraform can be used to configure OpenBao. So everything as code applies to OpenBao as well. If a consumer, can be a user or a system, wants to use OpenBao, they first need to obtain a token. That's done through an authentication engine. So let's assume me as a person, I want to work on AWS today. I could authenticate to OpenBao and hopefully get credentials for that day, or a pipeline can authenticate and get credentials for an hour or so to do the deployment. With authentication, you get some kind of a policy, and we'll see in a moment that OpenBao is heavily API based. So those policies contain paths to secrets engines or authentication engines that allow certain capabilities. And eventually you can get a secret, right? And getting could be that OpenBao serves some secret value from its secure enclave. It can also be that OpenBao generates a credential on request and serves it to the requester. And that secret is a bit of an abstract term, but it can be a couple of things. KV, like a key value, which Roel already mentions a couple of times, is a very simple key and a value: username, root, password, XYZ. Dynamic secrets, that's what we are quite fond of. Those are created at request and also revoked once the time to live or the expiry time is over. PKI, there's a full PKI in OpenBao. There's many more actually, like this AWS account, which is also considered a dynamic secret. Everything in OpenBao is stored on disk, encrypted. We'll see that in the demos too with unsealing. And traffic to and from OpenBao is typically encrypted. You can opt not to encrypt it. It's not a smart choice. You should probably use some certificate to encrypt that traffic. So data at rest and data in transit is encrypted. Let's have a look. Let's start a bit of an OpenBao cluster. On the diagram on the right-hand side, you see a very simple setup. 3 nodes, in this case, Docker containers running on a single laptop, not production ready, but good to try things on. And on the bottom right, you see these 3 storage layers. That's where Raft is a mechanism that OpenBao uses to store data. And in this case, we've prepared a couple of commands to start up the cluster. This is a OpenBao sandbox or demo environment, which contains many other aspects. Roel, can you start up the cluster?
Maybe it's good to first show the server config.
That is a good one. Yeah. Open one of the configurations. So this is fed to OpenBao. Let's go over it from top to bottom. So you see the first section, lines 1 to 20 something, is where we configure the cluster. We basically tell it there are neighbors and try to find them here. This is static. There's all kinds of ways to make this dynamic. In this case, we know we're going to get 3 containers, so we also know their address, so it is quite static. You also see the certificate material in there. There's 2 listeners on line 23 and 35. One listener is designed for traffic, users doing or applications doing requests. The bottom one is designed for telemetry, right? Yeah.
Right.
And if you scroll a bit further down, you see a couple of parameters that can be set. So pretty straightforward. And in the demo, we'll touch on a couple of other things. You see that the plugin mechanism is used on line 81, 88. So OpenBao knows of plugins. You can create your own plugins. There's many plugins available. And the line 95 contains a bit about sealing. We'll dive into that later. And line 101 describes what to do with audit lines. We'll also come back to that later. The Docker Compose may be interesting to look.
It's quite large, but
yeah, exactly. Let's skim over it. You basically see. Well, let's just focus on a load balancer. It's very long.
Yeah, it's
a load balancer. I think it's HA proxy in this case, and 3 OpenBao nodes. There are extra nodes in here for the other demos we do, but that's just the focus here. And they have addresses and variables that the container listens to. I think we're ready to start it up.
Yes.
Yeah, you see more than one thing occurring here. So Docker Compose ran, it's up. Terraform runs to configure OpenBao for us. In this case, normally you would probably do this split or so. This just makes it a lot more easy to start everything up. So we now have a OpenBao cluster. Let's have a look. Bao status. Well, probably export a few variables.
Yeah, that should be already good.
Oh, cool. Yeah, so we have a cluster running. And on the bottom, you see there's Raft committed index and applied index. There's data in it. It's active. So this looks pretty good. We can probably inspect the neighbors. So Bao operator Raft list peers. Yeah, and we see that we have 3 nodes, all on the same a physical machine, so not really relevant. Interesting here is that state column, the third column. There is one leader and a couple of followers. Leaders are intended to process read and write requests. Followers can answer read requests. And that is new for OpenBao, so it makes it a bit more scalable if you add more nodes. Writes will always end up at the leader, so that is a bit of a bottleneck. Typically, you see that 90% or more is read traffic. Do we also have namespaces?
Yes.
Our namespace list. Yeah, so Terraform or OpenTofu did that for us. So we have a cluster up and running. There's data in it. I think we can progress to the next slide.
So for the next demonstration, we're going to be building up on the cluster that we just started up and deployed. And the first one, the first practical demo is the key value secret engine. So that is probably the most recognizable secret management pattern. It stores a value at a pod. You authenticate, and then you can read it back through the OpenBao API. But OpenBao does not only like store those secrets, it stores them behind identity and policy and versioning if you use KV2, and also audit controls. And with KV2, it adds certain lifecycle behavior. So in this case, with KV2, KVV2, you have versions, you have metadata, you have also deletion semantics. So you have the ability to create multiple versions of a specific secret, and you also have the ability to delete or revoke them. KV in itself is useful for mostly for static values like application configuration, maybe a bootstrap credential or an integration secret that cannot easily be generated dynamically. Where possible, dynamic secrets are actually stronger because credentials are created on demand and they expire automatically. KV is the baseline pattern before we show the next step, which is the dynamic secrets part. So let's go back to my terminal. So we have the running cluster, and what we now can do is enable the KV secret engine. So as mentioned before, everything within OpenBao is pod-based. So what we now are going to be doing in the root namespace in this case is enabling the KV engine version 2 on the pod demo KV. We get a confirmation back that it's created. This then allows us to put a specific secret to a pod. In this case, we're going to be creating a secret under app config with key value, owner as demo, and environment as dev. We get some metadata back. This is the first version because this is the first secret that we just created. And we also see the metadata when this actual secret has been created. So now that we have written this secret, we now have also the ability to read it back to us. And what we see here now is, again, the metadata block and also the data that has been stored in the KV store. So in our case, it was environment value dev and key owner value demo. So what we're now are going to be doing is creating the second version of the secret. So we'll be overriding the first version. And in this case, we're going to be changing the environment from dev to prod. This again shows us some metadata, the creation time, and we also see that the version is iterated to number 2. What we then can do is again read back this data. And we see that the current version is number 2 and the environment is again prod now.
Mm-hmm.
We also can get the metadata for this specific pod. And this will give us a little bit more information about the secret versions and the status of those versions that have been stored. In this case, we have 2 versions. Both of them aren't destroyed, and the current version of the secret is number 2. So let's just quickly clean this up. And we can confirm that it's also deleted. Nothing is found.
Mhm.
And this concludes the KV demo.
Yeah, so that key value, as you've seen, just stores some sensitive data. So no logic to it except that version. So it's nice. It's better than nothing. There's can be much better. And that's where dynamic secrets come in. If you take a look at this image, on the left-hand side, you see an application. It doesn't really matter, some web application or middleware or so. And on the right-hand side, you see a database. So traditionally, the application person would get with a post-it as some kind of a credential from the database team. And so very sensitive. OpenBao is in the middle, and that acts a bit like a broker. So that application logs in, requests credentials. OpenBao at that moment creates credentials on the backend and returns it to the requester, which means that from that moment on, the application can follow the bottom path to connect to that backend, to that resource. And that's probably for a short period of time. I think in this demo, we use a minute, which is super short. I would expect maybe an hour or a day. It depends on what's used here. Let's also demo this. First, we need to enable a dynamic secrets engine. It's actually called a database secrets engine. Yeah. This does nothing yet, or not too much, right? We haven't told it where the database is and how to configure it and so on. So next step we need to do is tell it where that backend is, where that database is. Yeah, so if you take a look at this command, we're going to configure that Postgres backend. We also tell it that it's Postgres, give it a couple of roles, a connection URL. So probably you see Postgres somewhere in the middle. We're all in containers here, so that's pretty easy. And we also tell it how to connect it with that username and password. That is a bit sensitive, right? Because you still need to enter a username and password. So if we hit return here, OpenBao at this moment will also try to connect. That sensitive password that we've given, normally you would rotate that. And that means only OpenBao knows that credential. So it doesn't really matter what the old password was, it doesn't exist anymore. Next up is that we need to tell OpenBao how it should create users. And here you see that SQL statement. I'm not very good at SQL, but it probably makes a user. Interesting here is that in the middle of that SQL statement, you see a valid until line or part. In this case, the backend, Postgres, itself has this valid until moment. That is great because Postgres will revoke that credential itself. A lot of backends don't have that, don't have a trick to say, hey, it should be invalidated after a certain period of time. That means that OpenBao must go out and revoke that credential actively. Yeah, so we've now told OpenBao there's a database. Here's how you add a new user. Let's try to make a new user. Couple of statements here. So the first one, creds equals, basically reads credentials from this secrets engine, and the rest is to chop up the results and use it at a later stage. You see some kind of release ID, a duration of 60 seconds, so we sort of need to hurry. Let's try this credential. Exactly, so we see some PSQL, and we've gotten a result. That means we can connect using that user. What is our lease time now? It's probably still 40 seconds or so.
Yeah, let's take a look. Let's clear the screen for now.
Yeah, and for yeah, 27. So that credential will still work for half a minute or so. And you'll see that in a moment, some 20 seconds left, that credential is revoked and we cannot access it anymore. This means that a lost secret or leaked secret is far less critical. Yes, it's not good, or you should do everything you can to prevent that. But if a secret is valid for 5 minutes, that's a completely different story than if it's valid for hours or days or forever, basically. Let's try again. Probably it's revoked by now. Yeah. So we cannot connect anymore. That credential has been revoked, and there is no secret anymore. We noticed for banking industry, they're heavy on auditing. This pattern is a bit confusing because an auditor will typically ask, where's that user? Who has gotten access? There is no user until it's created. There is a trick in this dynamic secrets engine to keep the same user at least and rotate the password. That is an option. I like this much more better. There is nothing to try and connect. It just doesn't exist anymore. I think you can clean it up. You don't have to rule, but
We'll do that often.
yeah. Auditing is pretty critical as well. So OpenBao decided that integrity is more important than availability, meaning if OpenBao cannot dump its log lines, audit log lines, it will stop functioning. So it's pretty important to set this up properly. And there's a couple of tricks you can use to prevent this from happening, to always allow OpenBao to send its audit devices. Just a brief moment. Well, we've mentioned a few times, OpenBao is a fork of HashiCorp Vault, and this behavior changed a bit. So it used to be an API call to configure or change audit devices. It's now in the configuration, which is pretty logical, which means that from the moment OpenBao starts first time, audit logs are being kept. It used to be an API call, which means the first day, hour, whatever, there was no auditing. So I think this is a pretty strong pattern. Let's have a look at the terminal again. And let's try to see what audit devices do we have.
Let's see. We can do that with Bao audit list.
Exactly. And you see a single audit device, which is a file. Fine, not a big problem. If this file is not writable, read-only file system, full permissions, whatever, OpenBao will stop functioning. So it prioritizes integrity over availability. This comes from the configuration. So can you show that part of the configuration rule?
Yes.
Yeah. And this is really different from HashiCorp Vault. OpenBao has this listed in the configuration. Yeah, I like it. It is a bit of a change of the way of working, but it's pretty smart. Let's inspect a couple of log lines. And for that, we probably need to figure out the leader.
Yeah. Good thing that we have some commands prepared.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to type these every day. And let's have a look. Here's a couple of log lines. You see the request coming in. Everything's encrypted, so it's not really readable by me. And you also see a response. I wonder what did we actually, something with system, don't actually know. Typically, you would send this off to a SIEM for further analysis. So maybe forensics, right? So something happened. What exactly happened during that moment? Or maybe to act on strange patterns like, hey, the root token is used, but that should never happen. And alert maybe some NOC or team that can help that. Let's see. Yeah, we can probably close off this one as well.
So now that we have shown a little bit of how OpenBao works, or at least on the surface level with KV and with the dynamic secrets, and also a little bit about cluster startup, we skimmed over maybe most of the most important operational concept within OpenBao, and that is unsealing or sealing versus unsealed state. So Robert mentioned at the beginning of the presentation that OpenBao protects its data at rest. When OpenBao service starts, it does not automatically have access to the cryptographical material it needs to decrypt and use its actual storage. In a sealed state, the server is unable to serve normal secret operations. And you could see sealing as some kind of as a security boundary. So when the storage is sealed, nobody can access the storage layer. It prevents a restarted or stolen instance from automatically accessing protected data unless the required unseal process actually succeeded. And there are two broad operating models. First off, you have the manual unseal, which is commonly referred as Shami key shares. In that model, multiple key holders provide enough shares to reconstruct the unseal key. However, this does create a human control point or a human in the loop. It also creates operational overhead. So you need to have procedures, key holder availability, and emergency access planning. So for example, when you do regular maintenance, you always need to have, if you use a 305 share, then you always need to have 3 people available to reconstruct the unseal keys after a reboot, which is from a security standpoint quite secure, but from an operational standpoint, it causes a lot of friction. So OpenBao supports a second model, and that is auto unsealing. And this is where OpenBao actually relies on a external KMS, or when you run on-prem and you have access to it, an HSM-backed mechanism. This is for production operations actually a little bit more flexible because the nodes can restart without waiting for humans, but it does shift the trust to the external key management system that you are using. So that actually means that your KMS or your HSM design becomes part of the OpenBao security architecture. So for regulated or enterprise environments, unsealing is not really a technical setting, it's also a governance decision. So who actually controls the key material, who can rekey, how are the recovery keys stored, what happens if a key holder leaves, what are the emergency procedures, how do you even test this without weakening your production controls? So there's a lot to think about, both when you're using manual unseal, but also auto unseal. And another important part is also what you see here in this diagram is the root token. So under normal circumstances, you should only use the root token as a emergency under exceptional administration pressure, and not for normal operations. So, for example, not using it for creating backups, for example. And a good production setup would actually just revoke the root token after initialization, which also is something that OpenBao can help with the self-initialization feature, which automatically revokes the root token after initialization.
And just to emphasize on that, we do a lot of projects on OpenBao, right? And this is always a hot topic. How do you unseal? And just to explain, if a machine with OpenBao or a thing with OpenBao starts, it's sealed, it needs unsealing. You typically have a cluster of 3 or 5. Imagine 5. That would mean 15 times a person would need to type something in. That is not nice. It works, it's very secure, but it's certainly not nice. Plus the burden of who has keys and how secure are they and so on. So nearly always ends up at automatic unsealing. Monitoring becomes critical. So OpenBao typically comes into a company as a developer tool. So a couple of developers liked it or saw a need for it, and it becomes important. A good integration of OpenBao means that many things, many applications depend on OpenBao. Eventually, if it's down or unreliable, it becomes very difficult for an organization. Lots of production outages and so on. So monitoring is critical. There's a couple of aspects. You have the audit logs. Fine. Those are not so operational, more forensics. You've got the output from the BAU command, OpenBao command, can be helpful for an operational team. Plus, you need to monitor the infrastructure that it runs on for CPU and disk saturation and especially memory. OpenBao needs its memory. So if there's not enough memory, it will stop. The out of memory killer will come by and it results in an unstable cluster. Will start, run for a while, stop, and so on. So that's not an acceptable situation. In OpenBao, there's also telemetry. So you can use something like Prometheus to scrape that and get more details of how OpenBao is doing. For a project, this for us nearly always comes at the end, while it is pretty important to get a good baseline before you put it in production.
This one is for you.
And you're muted.
Yes. Okay. Well, thank you, Robert and Roel. We've got a couple of questions that we also would like to.
We're not at
Yeah,
the
that's
end.
later. That's later.
Yeah. Okay. So the key takeaways these days for the big organizations where we work for, you need secret management. Also to be compliant with your with the NIS2, for example, if you need to be compliant with that. We can plan, build, and run your environment, so we can advise, we can help you. What we typically do is that we share our knowledge, so we don't want to become, let's say, part of your team, but we want to help your team, educate your team. And of course, we also deliver support. So if you need help, you can always call us, like I already explained in the beginning of this presentation. OpenBao, it's production ready, also for mission critical environments. We have big names that already, a name that we can mention, for example, is NXP Semiconductors. It's already using OpenBao in production. And we also help a lot of ministries and a lot of banks and organizations in Germany, etc. We as developers, as contributors, we also have tooling to monitor, but also to migrate, for example, from HashiCorp Vault to OpenBao. We've got some tools ready for that and to make migration easy. And also for you to help you to manage the OpenBao deployments.
Yeah, so new in OpenBao 2.6. I think beta has been released yesterday or the day before, so very fresh.
Last week.
Yeah. Oh, it's old news already.
No, not really. It's just a beta. It's a beta release, but there's quite some interesting features coming up. Not sure if you want to go into that.
Yeah, that first one is super interesting. So up to 2.6, OpenBao would be sealed or unsealed as a whole. The whole OpenBao instance would be sealed or unsealed. And now they're moving the sealing to a namespace, which sounds like a simple trick, but it's actually pretty smart. This means a namespace can also be assigned a different storage backend, maybe faster or more secure or different volume to not have noisy neighbor effects. Plus, you can also seal a single namespace if there's troubles or unexpected behavior or so. So pretty big one, actually. Auto unseal plugins. So OpenBao used to come with a couple of batteries included for unsealing. And I think people realized, well, that's difficult to determine how to unseal. So that's become a plugin now. We're experimenting a bit. We don't really know yet what a good unseal plugin would be. It does work, and probably the community will write plugins that could be interesting. I'm just curious.
Yeah, I'm looking into TPM-based auto unsealing.
Yeah, and just to get an understanding, is this helpful for us? Could this work? Could a customer use it, and so on? Workflows is new. So imagine you have a team onboarding self-service page that now probably should do a couple of requests to OpenBao to make a namespace, set a policy, authentication engine, secrets engine, all kinds of things. This can be captured in a single workflow now, meaning the deployment orchestrator can do a single call. OpenBao will do all those things and report back they're done. So a bit more simple to integrate. The authenticated route generation rule, you've played with this, right?
Yeah, I played this. I'm actually waiting for this feature because I want to use it for a customer. But yeah, it allows you then to create a policy and to use an authenticated API endpoint to regenerate the root key. So normally you should revoke that root key, but there are cases that you need to regenerate it. And before it was an unauthenticated request. That doesn't mean that you can willy-nilly just hit that API endpoint and then get a root token. But from a security perspective, it's a little bit better if you use an authenticated identity to request that root key based on your recovery keys.
Yeah, and finally, the distroless containers. Not everyone runs OpenBao in a container. You certainly can. It works fine. And that's now distroless. I think a small change, but I'm not even sure what distro it used to be. I guess Alpine or so. Doesn't really matter. It's now distroless.
Yeah. It just reduces the service because distroless doesn't include anything unless you include it yourself. So yeah, then the difficult part. Because OpenBao is a fork of OpenBao, you can see the migration a little bit as like a fault-to-fault migration, but that doesn't really mean that it's trivial. So OpenBao originated as a fork, so it preserves a high degree of compatibility, especially the APIs or the front end. But on the back end, there are certain things that are different between OpenBao and Vault, and that means that you have to really assess the environment or assess your Vault environment to see what secret engines you are using, authentication methods you are using, namespace or other enterprise-specific use cases, and cut over. So for standard use cases like KV and many auth methods and policies and common secret engines, it can be straightforward, proper planning. But for enterprise-specific patterns, we usually suggest a design review. And we can support you with that full path, with the assessment, the migration planning, validation, and the support. We have tooling available that allows us to migrate from Vault and Vault Enterprise to OpenBao. So if that is something that you were interested in, you can contact us for that.
Yeah. That brings us to the questions and answers.
Yes, and we have got a couple of questions. First of all, a question from Walter. For HSM integration, when OpenBao is configured as issuing CA, is it possible to generate the CA key pair in the HSM such that the private key stays in HSM, but it's used by OpenBao to sign certificates that it issues? In HashiCorp Vault, you need the KMIP module for this normal HSM migration. For HSM Unseal is not sufficient. For strict internal PKI compliancy requirements that we are subject to, it is required that the CA key resides in the HSM. I don't have a clue what I'm reading. Sorry, I'm sales.
Yeah, I do a little. That's actually a feature that is on the current roadmap that allows you then to store that private key for your CA in HSM, like you can do, for example, with the auto and seal mechanism that also supports the HSM. But for example, for the transit engine and for the PKI engine, that is something that's on the roadmap.
Okay. We have a multi-cloud setup. This is a question from Andrew. We have a multi-cloud setup where each cloud platform has capabilities to take care of secrets. How OpenBao complement cloud platforms? Can you explain with a use case or a practical example?
Yeah, this is a good one. So indeed, all cloud providers have some secret facilities or tricks or services or mechanisms. Those work well, right? There's no problem with them. If you have a multi-cloud setup or you move to a different cloud provider, you also need to move that secrets method or mechanism. What OpenBao, where that really helps, is that it doesn't really matter where you run. There's a similar way to obtain secrets. It can be on-prem, it doesn't matter which cloud provider, it doesn't matter. You speak to OpenBao, you speak that language, an API that's well documented. So migrating to a different cloud provider or to on-prem or from of on-prem to a cloud provider becomes a bit easier. At least that the mechanism to obtain secrets or to put secrets is shared, is the same. So from a developer's perspective, it can be beneficial. Honest answer, if you have one cloud provider and you never leave that cloud provider, you're always going to stick to that cloud provider. You could use the secrets mechanism of that cloud provider. But for example, those dynamic secrets, that is a good trick. Most cloud providers don't have that. So I think it does complement or maybe replace Cloud Platform secrets management tool. Yeah, as we say, we don't like vendor lock-ins or any lock-in. So feel free to use whatever you use. OpenBao gives a bit more capabilities to be free to move around.
You can create a snapshot and redeploy on Azure when you first run on Azure, and then restore on AWS or on premise.
Yeah,
It just
there's
it gives you the flexibility that you need,
Yeah.
and especially if you need something more than only a KV store, and if you need encryption as a service or PKI as a service, or any of the dynamic secret engines that OpenBao supports.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. The next question is from René. Are dynamic secrets only possible with a database as backend?
No. It's also plugin based, so you could write your own plugin. Whatever you request for a secret needs to be applicable, right? So in some situations it's not really applicable. A database is a very good illustration of a dynamic secrets engine. It can also be an AWS account, a GCP account, an Azure account, likely even LDAP accounts. Bit of a guess. I'm looking at the rule here. So you can configure all kinds of dynamic secrets basically. And nice is that the way to interact with OpenBao is the same. It doesn't really matter what that backend is. From a developer perspective, you obtain a secret, whatever happens on the background. So quite powerful. No, the database is certainly not the only dynamic secrets engine. For demonstration purposes, it's quite understandable and quite clear what happens.
Yes, thank you. And the last question from Rahul. Is there a capability in OpenBao like the secret sync in HashiCorp Vault? If yes, where are the secrets it can manage, like Cloud Vaults, Kubernetes secret stores, GitHub action secrets, etc.?
Ooh, a lot to unfold here.
So secret sync, like from Vault Enterprise, is also currently not in OpenBao. So you could in theory build that yourself, either externally or contribute it upstream, but in the core itself it's not available yet.
Okay, and then
that is it's a use case that has come up before, so we know that there's appetite for that.
Okay. And then Andrew created an add-on question. He's got a follow-up. I see 3 models with respect to secret management. 1, central secrets management. 2, cloud native secret management. And 3, hybrid, where secret management only does governance. What would you recommend in a multi-cloud setup?
Yeah, I don't see that split per se. Maybe Roel has a different opinion. Let's hear him in a moment. What I see is that there are secrets that need to be managed. It doesn't really matter if it's central, on-prem, cloud, native. It doesn't really matter. Indeed, with a secrets management, you basically provide evidence that your secrets are governed, are managed. So this answer is very tainted, of course. Any environment can benefit from OpenBao. So I don't specifically see that differentiation. It's secrets. They need to be managed or need to be securely stored or something like that. And it doesn't matter really where or how you approach that. It can be central, can be cloud native, doesn't matter too much. Eventually, you basically prove for compliance that you manage your secrets. Rule, do you have something to add here, or did you interpret it differently?
It makes also the centralized governance and centralized auditability for compliance purposes also a little bit more easy instead of having scattered around on different your different cloud environments or on premise. So it makes probably the life for your compliance officers or your security engineers a little bit more easy.
Yeah,
At least that's how I see it personally.
I think so too.
Okay. Then we don't have any further questions. One last remark from our side. I hope you had your questions answered, that you have a little bit more overview of what we do and what OpenBao can mean for your organization. What we typically offer is a whiteboard session. We will come to you, or remote, but most of the times we'll come to you. And then if you can explain us your use case, your setup, the problems that you have, we can draw on the same whiteboard how we would approach the problem, how OpenBao fits in the solution. And so that makes it very touchable and practical and pragmatic, how OpenBao can help your organization. Thank you, Roel. Thank you, Robert. Thank you for everybody who made this possible. If you want to ask any follow-up questions, or if you want to plan the whiteboard session with us, please write us a mail at sales. What is that? Sales minus NL dash. Yeah, that's sales dash NL at adfinis.com. And I wish you all a very happy day, and see you next time. Thank you.
Thanks for attending.